Invasion of the Body Snatchers was not just Cold War paranoia in a can. It was pure production terror. Actors suffocating in latex tombs, a producer fresh from prison for shooting someone in the groin, and a director so desperate to prove his film worked that he smuggled a tape recorder into a secret preview screening to ambush his own studio. This is 20 weird facts about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and if you stay until the end, I will reveal the bonus fact about what Don Siegel did to Dana Winter offset that nearly made her break her neck. You are next. Number 15. The producer shot his wife's agent in the groin 4 years earlier. Walter Wanger was not your typical Hollywood producer. By the time he made Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he had already shot a man and served time for it. Not figuratively. Literally pulled a trigger and sent someone to the hospital. In December 1951, Wanger suspected his wife, actress Joan Bennett, was having an affair with her agent, Jennings Lang, from MCA. He hired private detectives. They confirmed his fears. On December 13, 1951, Wanger found Joan Bennett's green Cadillac in the parking lot of Lang's agency. He waited. An hour later, Bennett and Lang emerged. There was a violent argument. Bennett yelled, "Get away from here and leave us alone." Wanger pulled out a gun and fired 2 shots. One bullet hit the Cadillac's tail fin. The other went straight into Jennings Lang's groin. Not just the groin, specifically the testicles, though newspapers delicately referred to the area as the groin for their readers' sensibilities. Lang survived. Wanger was arrested and charged with attempted murder. His attorney, legendary Hollywood lawyer Jerry Giesler, mounted a temporary insanity defense. Wanger pleaded guilty to assault with a deadly weapon and served 4 months at the county honor farm in Castaic. While in prison, he was appalled by conditions. That experience led him to produce the prison film Riot in Cell Block 11 in 1954. A year later, he made Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The incident became inspiration for Billy Wilder's The Apartment. Bennett's career never recovered. Number 14. Carolyn Jones was claustrophobic. Creating the pod replicas required the 4 lead actors to be completely encased in casting material. Not just their faces, their entire naked bodies. The process was medieval. Each actor was laid on a slanted board and covered head to toe in plaster of Paris. Then they waited while it hardened. They breathed through straws stuck in their mouths. Nothing else was exposed. The material got very hot as it set. For someone without claustrophobia, this would be uncomfortable. For Carolyn Jones, it was torture. Jones was intensely claustrophobic, being sealed inside plaster while breathing through a thin straw while her body temperature rose. Production designer Ted Haworth had budgeted only $30,000 total for the pods. There was no alternative method. No way to make the duplicates without this process. Jones had to endure it or quit the film. She endured it. Dana Winter described it as being in a sarcophagus. I was in this thing while it hardened, and of course, it got rather warm. I was breathing through straws or something quite bizarre, and the rest of me was encased. The crew, perhaps trying to lighten the mood or maybe just cruel, would tap on the hardening plaster and joke with the actors. During Winter's casting, the guys making the mold tapped on the back and said, "Dana, listen, we will not be long. We are just off for lunch." They laughed. She could not move, could not see. Number 13. The film was shot in 19 to 23 days, with a budget under $400,000. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was made for $382,190. In 2025 dollars, that is roughly $4.3 million, still incredibly cheap for a feature film. Of that budget, only $15,000 went to special effects. Everything you see on screen was achieved for about what a new car cost in 1956. The entire production shot between March 23 and April 27, 1955. Different sources report 19 to 24 days of filming. Don Siegel claimed 19 days. Other reports say 23 or 24 days with about 4 days of studio production. Either way, less than a month to create a film that would define paranoid cinema. The cast and crew worked 6-day weeks with Sundays off. The production went over schedule by 3 days because Siegel insisted on night-for-night shooting instead of cheaper day-for-night. Night scenes needed to look genuinely dark and threatening. Siegel refused to compromise. That perfectionism, with almost no time or money, created constant pressure. There was no second unit work, no process shots, no room for error. When Kevin McCarthy stabbed his own pod replica in the greenhouse scene, he had to get it right the first time. Due to budget constraints, only one pod was made of each actor. If McCarthy screwed up the take, there was no replacement. The film would be ruined. Number 12, Kevin McCarthy was nearly killed. Filming the highway scene at dawn. The iconic ending nearly became a snuff film. The sequence was not shot on the actual Hollywood freeway. It was filmed on a little used cross bridge with stunt drivers at the wheel, but that did not make it safe. Kevin McCarthy had been running for days. The film's action required him to sprint constantly over every terrain, up hills, through tunnels, across town squares. "I got Charlie horses," McCarthy admitted later. His legs were cramping. He was not sleeping well. He was physically and mentally exhausted. Don Siegel scheduled the highway sequence for dawn. McCarthy, depleted and sleep-deprived, had to dodge actual moving vehicles driven by stunt drivers who were alert but not psychic. If McCarthy's timing was off by a second, if he stumbled, if exhaustion made him fall, he would go under the wheels. Siegel knew it. "I was terrified that his timing would be off and he might fall down under the wheel of the cars and trucks," Siegel confessed later. He told the stunt drivers to remain extra alert in case McCarthy tripped without warning. The drivers did their best, but they were still driving real cars at real speed toward an exhausted actor. McCarthy ran, dodged, screamed. The cameras captured his genuine panic. That is not acting technique you are seeing. That is a man at the edge of physical collapse, trying not to die while performing. The scene works because McCarthy's terror is real. He is not pretending to be desperate. He is desperate to finish the take, to not get hit, to survive one more second in traffic at dawn while his body gives out. Siegel got his shot. McCarthy survived. Barely. Number 11. The ending you know was forced by the studio at the last minute. Don Siegel's original ending had no hospital framing device, no psychiatrist, no epilogue. The film opened with Miles Bennell's train arriving in Santa Mira and ended with him standing on the highway, screaming at passing traffic loaded with pods. "They are here already. You are next. You are next." Then it cut to black. No hope, no rescue. Just Miles, alone, unbelieved, watching the invasion spread while the world ignored him. It was bleaker than bleak. It was existential horror. Allied artists saw the finished film and panicked. They could not release something that hopeless. Audiences in 1956 wanted resolution. They wanted to believe the authorities would handle it. The studio, wary of the pessimistic conclusion, insisted Siegel add a prologue and epilogue. Against his wishes, Siegel directed the additional scenes in September 1955. The framing device has Miles in custody in a hospital emergency ward, restrained by police, telling his story to a consulting psychiatrist played by Whit Bissell. In the closing scenes, pods are discovered at a highway accident. Miles's warning is confirmed. The authorities are alerted. The invasion will likely be stopped. More optimistic, more palatable, completely antithetical to Siegel's vision. Most film historians and critics hate the happy ending. It transforms the film from devastating tragedy to conventional thriller. Danny Peary, writing in cult movies, emphasized that the added scenes changed significantly what he saw as the film's original intention, but some, like George Turner, an American cinematographer, actually endorsed the frame story. The debate continues. Here's the thing. Both Siegel and Mainwaring were satisfied with the film as shot, original ending intact. The studio mandated changes were not collaborative. They were coerced. For decades, people saw the compromised version and loved it anyway. But the ending, the ending that offers hope, the ending that suggests authority and reason will prevail. That was not Siegel's film. That was the studio covering its posterior. The real ending is Miles screaming into traffic. Everything after is Hollywood refusing to trust its audience with despair. Number 10. Sam Peckinpah appears in the film and claimed he rewrote the script. Future legendary director Sam Peckinpah appears briefly in Invasion of the Body Snatchers as a meter reader. He also worked as dialogue coach on the film, a job he performed on several Don Siegel films in the 1950s. But Peckinpah, never one for modesty, claimed his contributions went much further. Throughout the years, Peckinpah asserted he had done work on the script ranging from minor modifications to major overhauls. His claims became so inflated that people who actually worked on the film had to correct the record. Cast and crew members stated that if Peckinpah made any changes to the script, it was limited to a few lines of dialogue. Nothing more. Certainly not the extensive rewrites Peckinpah bragged about. But Peckinpah kept pushing the narrative. He wanted credit. He wanted recognition for a film that was becoming a classic. His exaggerations grew so outrageous that Daniel Mainwaring, the actual credited screenwriter, threatened to file an official complaint with the Writers Guild of America. Only then did Peckinpah back down. The whole episode reveals something about Hollywood. A young, ambitious assistant director sees a low-budget science fiction movie he worked on become culturally significant. He wants his name attached to that success, so he inflates his contribution, testing how far he can stretch the truth before someone calls him out. Peckinpah read meters on camera and coached dialogue off camera. That was his role. Respectable work, but not writing. Number 9. Kevin McCarthy was jealous of Montgomery Clift while making the film. Kevin McCarthy and Montgomery Clift were close friends. In 1956, while McCarthy was shooting Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Clift was at MGM filming Raintree County with Elizabeth Taylor. The contrast could not have been starker. Clift was the star of a prestige picture, a big-budget historical extravaganza, a film destined for awards consideration, working with one of the most beautiful women in the world. McCarthy was making a B-budgeted science fiction movie for cheap studio allied artists in 23 days with a cast of character actors nobody had heard of. McCarthy was jealous. Who would not be? His friend was making Hollywood history while he was running through tunnels, dodging fake pods. Clift's film would premiere with fanfare. McCarthy's would open as half of a double feature with The Atomic Man or Indestructible Man, depending on the market. Clift had glamour, McCarthy had latex dummies and night shoots. The jealousy was real and understandable. Little did either of them know that eventually Raintree County would be virtually forgotten and Invasion of the Body Snatchers would be acknowledged as a classic, preserved in the National Film Registry, remade 3 times, and referenced in popular culture for 7 decades. The irony is perfect. McCarthy's low-budget embarrassment became his most famous role, earning him cinema immortality. Clift's prestige picture faded from memory. McCarthy reprised his role as Dr. Miles Bennell in Philip Kaufman's 1978 remake, appearing in a legendary cameo where he throws himself at Donald Sutherland's car screaming the same warning. He even showed up in Looney Tunes, back in action in 2003. Number 8. The film made over $2.5 million in 1956 alone. Invasion of the Body Snatchers cost $382,190 to produce. When it opened domestically in February 1956, many theaters displayed papier-mâché pods in lobbies and entrances along with large, lifelike, black and white cutouts of McCarthy and Winter running from crowds. The marketing was cheap but effective. Within the first month, the film earned more than $1 million. By the end of 1956, it had grossed more than $2.5 million in the United States alone. When it released in the United Kingdom later that year, it earned the equivalent of more than $500,000 in ticket sales. Do the math. The film cost under $400,000 and made over $3 million globally in its first year. That is not just profitable, that is an explosion. For comparison, Universal's budget-conscious approach meant they made 7 times their investment in 12 months. Allied Artists, the struggling distributor, had a genuine hit. The film was released as a double feature but outgrossed many A-list productions. Audiences came for Pod People paranoia and stayed to spread word of mouth about how genuinely unsettling it was. Critics largely ignored it on initial release. This was a cheap science fiction picture, not important cinema. But audiences did not care about critical respect. They cared about the creeping dread, the relatable suburban setting, the fear that anyone could be replaced. The Great Depression was over. The 1950s promised peace, progress, and prosperity. Invasion of the Body Snatchers suggested something else was growing beneath the surface. People paid to see that nightmare. They paid repeatedly. The film became a sleeper hit that just kept earning. 23 days of production, less than $400,000 invested, over $3 million returned in the first year. By any measure, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was a financial monster. Number 7. Production designer. Worried about the nudity of the pod replicas, Ted Haworth, the production designer who figured out how to create the pods for only $30,000, had an unusual concern. The foam rubber replicas of the actors, while technically not the actors themselves, were made from full body casts. They looked exactly like the naked bodies of Kevin McCarthy, Dana Winter, King Donovan, and Carolyn Jones. Every detail was there because the casting process captured everything. Hayworth worried that studio executives would object to the nudity of the pod likenesses. This was 1955. The production code was still in effect. Showing naked bodies, even if they were technically props and not actual human skin, could trigger censorship issues. Hayworth's solution was clever. He made sure the foam rubber duplicates were covered with strategic sheets, shadows, and angles during the greenhouse scene. The pods burst open, revealing the replicas, but nothing too explicit was shown. The suggestion was there, but the execution was careful. Studio executives saw the dailies and did not object. The scene passed without incident, but the worry was real. Even fake nudity was dangerous territory. Number 6. Don Siegel claimed he broke into Dana Winter's house to hide a pod. Director Don Siegel was a practical joker. According to Siegel, he once broke into Dana Winter's house and hid one of the prop pods under her bed. When Winter discovered it, she became hysterical. It is a great story. Perfect director anecdote. Very Don Siegel. Problem is, Winter had a completely different version of events. According to Winter, Siegel merely left the prop pod on her doorstep. No break-in, no elaborate prank, just a pod sitting outside her house. She almost broke her neck stumbling over it while leaving at dawn. Winter's version is less dramatic but more plausible. Why would Siegel risk actual breaking and entering? A crime for a movie prank. Leaving it on the doorstep achieves the same effect without felony charges, but Siegel's version made for better storytelling. Directors become mythologizers of their own productions. The truth gets embellished, the legend grows. What both versions agree on is that Siegel thought it was funny to bring the film's horror into Winter's real life. She did not find it funny. Whether she discovered a pod under her bed or tripped over one on her doorstep, the result was the same. Siegel's prank worked too well. The pods represented identity theft, the loss of self, the invasion of privacy. By putting one at Winter's home, Siegel violated her space in service of a joke. She almost broke her neck. He got his anecdote. Decades later, the story persists in two versions. The truth is probably somewhere between, but the invasion happened either way. Number 5. Dana Winter said Carolyn Jones was strangely unfriendly and unhelpful. Dana Winter was a newcomer when she landed the lead role of Becky Driscoll. She had won a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer for The View from Pompey's Head in 1955. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was her follow-up. She was professional, eager, and grateful. The cast and crew, she noted in interviews, were extremely nice to her, except Carolyn Jones. Jones, who played Teddy Belicec, was strangely unfriendly and unhelpful, according to Winter. Not overtly hostile, just cold, distant, unwelcoming. The reason remains unclear. Jones was more experienced, having worked steadily in film and television since the early 1950s. Maybe she resented Winter's newcomer status or felt threatened. Maybe they just did not click personally. Maybe Jones was dealing with her own issues. She had just endured being sealed in claustrophobic plaster while breathing through a straw. That experience would make anyone irritable. Whatever the cause, Jones kept her distance. Winter noticed. It stung. But Winter handled it professionally, observing Jones's technique and learning from her despite the unfriendliness. Years later, Winter still remembered the slight. That is telling. When an actor mentions decades later that a co-star was unpleasant, it meant the behavior was bad enough to leave a mark. Interestingly, both women's careers took very different paths. Winter continued in film and television, eventually finding cult success in projects like Santorini. Jones became immortal as Morticia Addams in the Addams Family TV series, a role so iconic it overshadowed everything else she had done. Both women survived the claustrophobic casting process. Both gave strong performances, but only one was nice about it. Hollywood is full of distant co-stars and career slights. This one just happened to occur on the set of a paranoid thriller where everyone plays emotionless duplicates. The irony writes itself. Number 4. The tunnel hiding scene was shot with actors buried in a trench. The scene where Miles and Becky hide in a tunnel while pod people run overhead searching for them required practical effects with no budget. Don Siegel and his crew shot the sequence in Bronson Canyon in the Hollywood Hills, the same location used as the Batcave entrance in the 1960s Batman TV series. To create the effect of the protagonist hiding beneath the ground while the mob runs past, Siegel had the crew dig a trench. McCarthy and Winter lay down in the trench. Wooden planks were placed over them. Then the extras playing pod people ran through the tunnel above them. It is a simple, effective, and slightly terrifying solution. McCarthy and Winter were actually buried under planks with people running overhead. Not much room for error. If someone tripped and fell, if the planks broke, if something went wrong. But the scene works beautifully. The camera shows the mob streaming past. We know Miles and Becky are inches beneath them. The paranoia is suffocating. Part of the effectiveness comes from knowing it is real. The actors are not pretending to be trapped. They are trapped for the duration of the take. Bronson Canyon became a frequent location for low-budget productions because it was free, dramatic, and close to Hollywood. Invasion of the Body Snatchers used it twice, for the tunnel scene and for the steep outdoor staircase chase sequence. The crew rigged a small dolly with wheels that rode the top of the staircase's iron rails to follow McCarthy and Winter as they ran. Ingenuity, born of poverty. The film could not afford elaborate camera rigs or complex locations, so they dug a trench, buried their stars under planks, and filmed the mob running over top. Cinema magic made from dirt and wood and terror. Number 3. The star's name, being McCarthy, was ironic, given the political climate. The film's lead actor was named Kevin McCarthy. The film was released in 1956, during the height of McCarthyism, the anti-communist crusade led by Senator Joseph McCarthy that created an atmosphere of paranoia, blacklisting, and fear throughout Hollywood and America. The coincidence of names was so perfect that some people thought it was intentional. It was not. Kevin McCarthy, the actor, was not related to Senator Joseph McCarthy, but the irony became inescapable when discussing the film's political subtext. Conservatives saw the pod people as representations of communist infiltration. Emotionless automatons brainwashed by totalitarian ideology, spreading through America and replacing free-thinking individuals with mindless drones. The film became, in their reading, a warning about the Red Menace. Liberals saw the pod people as conformist Americans frightened into mindless obedience by right-wing witch hunters, McCarthy himself and the House Un-American Activities Committee. The film became, in their reading, a critique of the very paranoia that McCarthyism exploited. Both sides claimed invasion of the Body Snatchers as political allegory supporting their worldview. Number 2. The film was originally titled They Come From Another World. The production was originally named The Body Snatchers after Jack Finney's serial in Collier's magazine. But Wanger wanted to avoid confusion with the 1945 Val Lewton film The Body Snatcher, a completely different story. So the studio assigned the title They Come From Another World in summer 1955. Don Siegel hated it. Too sensational. Too on the nose. Too schlocky even for a science fiction B-movie. Siegel suggested two alternatives, Better Off Dead and Sleep No More. Kevin McCarthy also pitched Sleep No More, thinking it captured the film's core threat. You cannot sleep or you will be replaced. Wanger offered his own suggestions. Evil in the Night and World in Danger. None of them landed with the studio. Allied artists eventually settled on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which split the difference. It kept Body Snatcher, but added Invasion to distinguish it from the Lewton film and make the alien threat explicit. Siegel was not thrilled, but it was better than They Come From Another World. The title debate reveals studio anxieties. They wanted something that sounded dangerous and science fiction without being confusing. They wanted marquee appeal for small-town theaters where double features played. The final title works. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is direct, memorable, and threatening without being ridiculous. It tells you exactly what you are getting. Better Off Dead is too ambiguous. Number 1. The film was released as a double feature and ignored by critics, despite making over $2.5 million in 1956. Despite becoming one of the year's biggest hits, despite audience enthusiasm, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was largely ignored by critics on its initial release. It was not screened for critics. It was not positioned as important cinema. Allied artists released it as a double feature with the British science fiction film The Atomic Man, and in some markets with Indestructible Man. If you went to the theater, you got 2 movies for the price of 1. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was the B movie half of that equation. Critics did not review B movies with the same seriousness they gave A-list productions. Science fiction was genre trash. Horror was exploitation. The combination was beneath critical consideration. Trade papers covered it. Variety called it effective. But major critics largely shrugged or ignored it entirely. The film succeeded through word of mouth and audience demand, not critical acclaim. Only later, years later, did critics and film scholars revisit Invasion of the Body Snatchers and recognize what they had missed. A masterpiece of paranoid cinema, a political allegory for multiple ideologies, a perfectly crafted thriller on a shoestring budget. By 1994, the Library of Congress selected Invasion of the Body Snatchers for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was not supposed to work. A producer fresh from prison for shooting someone, a director fighting his studio at every turn, a budget that would not cover craft services on a modern shoot, a 23-day schedule, actors entombed in latex, buried under planks, nearly killed by cars, an ending forced on filmmakers who hated it, humor cut because the studio did not understand tonal complexity, critics who ignored it, distribution as a double feature B movie nobody took seriously. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, because next week we are digging up another classic you think you know, but do not. Trust me, you are next.